The Honourable Dr. Peter Sharples.
Speaker, tēnā koe, tēnā tātou, te whare nei. The Speaker, the much anticipated zero budget was always going to be difficult for the Māori Party. Our relationship and confidence in supply agreement with the National Party binds us to support budget measures that we may or may not like or agree with. This government came to power as an economic crisis rocked the world, but over the last 3 months, with the exceptional circumstances of the Canterbury earthquakes and the Pike River disaster, have made the sharp edges even more precarious. An economic recession always has the most direct impact on those who are already worse off. So many families who are on low incomes, in casual or unskilled work or unemployed, who have dependents, are hit first and hit hardest. On top of that, any budget cuts to restore the national economy will have the greatest effect on those who are the most dependent on government support. Many are Māori, and our philosophy of whanaungatanga requires us to support and advocate for them. But the Māori Party stands on our kaupapa Māori for all New Zealanders. Manaakitanga, kotahitanga demand that we give priority to te pani me te rawakore, the alienated and the dispossessed. These are values handed down by our ancestors that continue to define us as tangata whenua and as Māori. We also look to our tikanga tuku iho for solutions to entrenched social and economic problems. The challenge for all of us can be expressed this way: whaia te rangatiratanga, seek control of your own destiny. That is what drove the Māori Party to enter Parliament, and that is what the Māori Party is looking for in this budget. We see rangatiratanga in the Māori education budget. Education for Māori is the way we maintain our language and cultural heritage and pass it on to future generations. But education is also the critical pathway out of the poverty trap. It enables individuals and families to seize the chance to learn new skills, gain new experiences, and to support their families and make greater contribution to their communities. New Zealand's education system has a responsibility to deliver education that nurtures the identity, language and culture of Māori learners. This budget delivers 60 million over the next 3 years to build more kura kaupapa Māori. It provides $3 million of new money over the 3 years to support development of a new Māori curriculum and resources. There are $9 million over 4 years to support iwi to develop school and community-based Māori language learning. And at long last, kura kaupapa Māori get the same support for school transport as other schools with $8 million in this budget. There are also $6.5 million so that all Decile 1, Decile 2, Decile 3 primary schools can run family-based literacy programs. We've piloted these programs in South Auckland and West Auckland. They are successful, involving all the family. And $17 million over 4 years, so another 20 schools can take up the Kotahitanga teacher training program. Kotahitanga helps staff to become more aware of how cultural differences influence their effectiveness as teachers. So even in tough times, this government is maintaining an investment in our future as a treaty-based nation through this education budget. In Māori affairs, we have given priority to 3 areas: hai whai atu te rangatiratanga, whānau ora, te reo Māori, te titi o Waitangi in the Constitution. $30 million over 4 years for whānau ora will maintain the momentum of this radical approach to government service delivery, which this has been pioneered and driven forward by my colleague Tariana Turia. Whānau-centred services will be expanded in the next areas to be served by 8 new provider collectives. Whānau ora calls for an integrated approach requiring agencies to coordinate and collaborate, and thus it promises efficiencies in service delivery. But the real promise of whānau ora is that it empowers whānau to take control of their destiny. by taking responsibility for their situation. So instead of whānau being further disempowered by government agencies telling them how to live their lives, services are tailored to support the family to deal with the key issues as they see them. With whānau themselves getting into the driving seat, support services will be more effective. As whānau achieve rangatiratanga, the need for ongoing government support diminishes. Also in the Māori Affairs budget, we have found $2 million to maintain community language initiatives while we follow through on Te Reo Māori Ora, a report which charted a clear direction for revitalising Te Reo Māori. Te Paepae Mutuhake, the independent panellists who wrote the report, were quite clear that whānau themselves must take the primary responsibility for speaking Māori at home. The role of the government is to support. With this budget, we continue to do that while we develop a new Māori language strategy. Another $2 million have been found to engage the nation in a discussion on New Zealand's constitution. This is of great importance to Māori because one of the issues on the table will be the place of Te Titi o Waitangi in our constitution. Finally, I must mention the settlement of a long-standing land issue near Taumarunui with an appropriation of $250,000 to Karangatakere trustees. This compensates them for not having been included in earlier settlements of injustices resulting from perpetual leases imposed on Māori lands. There were areas we needed to respond to, which in my urgent need for attention, I am thinking of the $12 million my colleague Tariana Turia has secured for addressing the blight of rheumatic fever, and the reallocation of $11 million in the family violence field to focus on those who need it most, frontline services for families in crisis. Meanwhile, this government is following through on the work of the Māori Economic Task Force by establishing an independent panel to develop a Māori economic strategy. Iwi and Māori groups are actively involved in infrastructure development, such as Ngā Pū Waia in the Rural Broadband Initiative, and in the environmental protection, for example, freshwater rights and management and the emissions trading scheme. Treaty settlements continue apace. Iwi are looking for opportunities to invest in public-private partnerships and in exporting new products to new markets. So much has happened over the past 3 years. Mr. Speaker, the Māori Party has been able to secure many gains and to avoid some losses by sitting at the government table and engaging with the issue through face-to-face debates. Kanohi ki te kanohi I te tepu, we've been able to achieve these gains. There will be measures in this budget that disappoint us and that our supporters will oppose, but we must not lose sight of the significant gains that we see here too. The Māori Party's manifesto at the last election called for the government to borrow prudently to protect vulnerable citizens from the worst impacts of the economic recession, and we believe the government has done that. Things could have been a lot worse. Looking at this budget, we remain convinced that maintaining a working relationship within government is in the long-term interests of our constituents. Mr. Speaker, the Māori Party will support this budget.
The Honourable Jim Anderson.
Mr. Speaker.